This video is going to be a review of all the scripts that we're going to use and continue with in this video playlist. Programming and making games with Unity 3D. Now, as you saw from my importing, there was a script that was giving me conflicts. Now what I've done is I've rewritten this script, so it's now going to be applicable to everything we've learnt in this series. We'll keep the flashlight in this series. Okay, but I've now reverted the MPC script all the way back to the very last video here, just before I turned it into that genre of which we will never speak of in this series again. Okay, so this is just a review of the scripts that we have up until now in dot product. Like I said, when we've imported things, as long as you've got your shaders too, everything is as we left it. We're watching the dot product here. Okay, so everything has now come over to my new project. Now for the script reviews. This time I'm just going to zoom in and show you each script once. I'm going to leave it for about 10 seconds so that you can pause the video and check what you have. Now I've brought this basic scripting one back because this is essentially a timer. This is how you set up a timer. Currently the timer increments, and if you like later on I'll show a timer that starts at the maximum value and then decreases over time. And then we check if the timer is less than or equal to 0. Then we reset the timer back to the maximum value. So that's how to use a timer forward, and also I've just simply described how to use one backwards. So that's more than 10 seconds on the timer. Let's quickly look at our state engine example. First we have an enum, where we set up all the different values of our enum, and then create a variable that stores that enum. And then if I scroll down just a little bit, there you see the example of a switch case. Now in this switch case, my cases are based on my enum values. So there is the state engine example. Now to the raycast example. Now this is a raycast from an object's position as the origin, and then we have to give it a direction as well. I will be very shortly doing a raycasting example using the mouse as an input as the position on the screen. And when you use the mouse and the screen as an input for your raycast, you are assigning both a position and a direction. So that'll be very shortly coming up. So there's the raycast example. And finally that scene, not finally, next the scene that I just demonstrated, and this was the dot product example. Quite short and sweet, yet powerful and effective. Okay, so that is the end of the example scripts. Now let's look at that MPC movement script. As I said, I have modified this script. I've brought this back to MPC 1.8. So I'm going to give it 5 to 10 seconds, and then I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to highlight each function. So again, just pause until you have all the information that's currently on the screen. So there was the start of our variables, and then our variables and the start function. And now I'm going to scroll down to the update function. So there is the update function. Now I'm going to scroll across so we can get the rest of that line. Okay. Now I'm going to scroll down to a decision-making function. Now to move down to the moving function, a joke I don't seem to tire of. Now the other things that have changed is I have added a couple of comments. Now let's just catch the rest of that debug, because it did return a lot of useful information that helped us steer around trees, because tree colliders were part of the terrain, and so they appeared in our raycast as terrain. The colliders were named terrain. So we quickly gathered some information based on the velocity of the rigid body. And for the end of that function, then we use the information we learned from a debug to create a simple velocity check. And then this steered our MPC around trees when this raycast failed because the tree colliders were named terrain. Okay, so moving down to the fixed update, nothing really changed there at all once we had it working. And finally, all the functions of our collision events. Now if you remember, I put in 2 considerations so that I didn't have to come back in and rewrite this script later. Because as a general standard, I always name my flat surface as floor, and as I scroll over, I name my terrain as terrain. That is only in the hierarchy window, in the scene view, where the terrain. In the project window, the actual asset, make sure you rename your terrains. Okay, so that is the MPC movement script that we created all the way from the start up to 1.8. Now, I'll quickly jump back to the scene I created. We're prototyping that MPC. And let's just check the functionality of that again. Well, let's first check the inspector. So if I scroll down to the inspector, you see we have our move speed, our turn speed. We've left ifs grounded public, just in case other scripts need to reference that. And we have the distance of our shoulder raycast to check for obstacles. And my state could now also be private, because it's nothing that we can change in the inspector. This state is determined by the script. We have our minimum range and maximum range of detection. And then we had a toggle boolean here. what type of enemy NPC we wanted to use. And then if the NPC was not chasing, we've got some additional variables so the NPC can make decisions to determine a new direction when he's walking around. So let's just see that in action again. This is where we were. Currently the NPC is running away. Now if I click chasing, now again he's assumed the role of finding his way to the target. And there we see as he stopped, he's reached his minimum range. So if we go back to running away, now he runs away, and as you saw, he got past 10, and he's now in his free roam state, where he will make decisions based on these numbers here. Okay, so that's just to confirm that the NPC script has been reverted to what we had for multi-purpose functionality. And his basic obstacle avoidance is still intact. Okay, and finally I will show the flashlight script again. As I said, we put a lot of functionality into that. We still have the flicker, I haven't taken that out. So you can have the flickering effect, and we have the fade effect that we built in. And also the option to use a consumable energy source, which we would then have to find in our scene, and we could add to this count here, and then as the torch ran out and we reset it, it would decrease this amount. So there are the variables and the start function. And actually the update function fits in nicely too. Now I'm going to scroll down. We have check for inputs function here. Now I'll just scroll over for the rest of that line. There wasn't much extra there, but it's important. Okay, because that was just a little bit, let's move on quickly. And there is a part of our run flashlight function. Let's just look at the first three states here. We'll copy out the off, the on, and the flickering state. Now I'm going to scroll down to show the rest of those cases. Okay, hopefully you have the flickering. I'm going to scroll down. And there is the fade in case and the resetting case. And that brings us to the end of that script. Okay, so this was just a basic review of the scripts that we have now got in this video playlist, and all the scenes that I did create that are still going to be applicable to this video series. Okay.